Advaita Vedanta is really not theoretical. It's not scriptural only, because it's all about the guru and the realization of the ParBrahman. What we are witnessing in the West and in India, the non-dual teachings, they're mainly in Brahmanda. So it's extremely difficult to find someone in the West or even India now who would be much deeper realized, not only the awareness Brahmajyoti, but ParBrahmanda. What is though unique about Adi Shankara is that, and it makes sense as well, that he was not only a hardcore Advaita debater, but also he was very centered in his heart. And whenever he was traveling through ashrams, he revived those ashrams. And he acknowledged the deities, the goddesses of these ashrams, the gods and goddesses, and explained the locals the deeper meaning, because over years and generations, it just becomes a ritual. It loses its essence. So as he was traveling through all the ashrams, he was reviving them with the deeper essence and meaning of these deities and of these specific qualities that these ashrams represent. So this is very unique to someone who would be a guru of Advaita Vedanta, which on one hand is strictly non-ritualistic because it recognizes the supremacy of inquiry. But that's what makes a good guru, that a good guru has a big heart, not only a big mind and sharp intellect and a clear seeing, but also a big heart and recognition of the cosmos, of the qualities of creation. So then it makes sense that he reached a deeper integration, a deeper realization of the true essence of Advaita Vedanta, which doesn't strictly exclude anything else. It's more whole and complete. And that is what ParBrahmanda is a lot about, because ParBrahmanda is it when someone truly realizes within ParBrahmanda, they do recognize the nature of creation and what this universe is all about, and life and all these aspects. So therefore, his main aspect was Advaita Vedanta, but he was also had a mastery of bhakti and karma yoga and many other aspects. So this makes one really beautiful and prominent, much more open-minded than sticking with only one thing and being blind about all the rest. So within divine cosmology, in Brahmanda, we encounter non-dual path, we encounter bhakti yoga, we encounter Karma Yoga and many other types. Jnana is typically called in Brahmanda Jnana Yoga, the yoga of inquiry, of self-knowledge. But the real Advaita Vedanta, it goes beyond into ParBrahmanda, and it's bigger than only inquiry alone. So that's why Advaita Vedanta major path is a little bit similar to the Param Shiva Path, because on the Param Shiva Path the truth is also most important, and inquiry into the truth. And there is a lot of overlapping between Advaita, but in Param Shiva Path, the Param Shiva is the principal deity. And therefore it includes inquiry, it includes some devotion as well to Shiva, to the Lord Shiva, and his higher form as Param Shiva. So it actually includes jnana and bhakti and a bit of karma yoga and so on. So it's like in ParBrahmanda many things merge together, while in Brahmanda they're pretty much like strictly separated. If you do bhakti yoga, stick with that. If you do inquiry, then we're gonna sit all day long and just inquire until our minds steam off. You know, it's like pretty separated. But in ParBrahmanda you merge many aspects. It's much more inclusive. That's why it's so much bigger and more whole and more complete. Advaita Vedanta, now how does it look like in the divine Advaita Vedanta? It's no longer called Advaita Vedanta in the divine. Meher Baba is the divine master of truth, inquiry. If you see his cosmology, he beautifully incorporated how the soul realizes who am I, the divine theme. And then he had a clear seeing to see that, okay, Ramana was at the 7th stage of realization. And then others at 6 and 5 and 4 below. So he had clarity to see the deeper stages of existence or God. So in the divine, it's no longer called Advaita Vedanta, because in the divine we'd work with the divine path and the divine spirit, which we will elaborate in the coming meetings. So we could say that in Brahmanda there is a lot of things, but they're either separated or very mixed up like a noodle soup. There's not that much clarity. Everything is dual or strictly non-dual, but again limited. In ParBrahmanda it's way more inclusive. It's so much deeper, so much real, so much truer. Many things merge together in a major, more complete way. And in the divine, the vastness of these quadrillions of universes and all the spiritual teachings further merge together into those specific divine spirits or divine paths. And each of them is fully complete in its own way. Each of them has all the aspects of inquiry and bhakti and even nada, sound, the yoga of sound and karma yoga. All these aspects are literally, all these oceans are merged in a completion. And all the vastness of all the paths are merged into completion. And that becomes a divine path. That's why it's hard to wrap your head around divine path, because there's so much. It's like, it's literally about everything. That's why it's complex, and there is so much, because it's complete. It has so many different aspects. And within the divine, now to finalize the topic about Advaita Vedanta, the very first being who literally means knowledge, divine knowledge, the very first being that emanated as a concrete divine knowledge, his name is Gyani, and recently known as, very recently, as Kabir. So he would be the ultimate Advaita Vedanta Adi Sadguru, though Meher Baba is also Adi Sadguru. But Gyani was way, way before Meher Baba. Because in this Yuga, Kabir came in the Kali Yuga, but he came in other Yugas. He came before the whole universe was created. He was before ParBrahmanda was created. He is the original one within the divine, as Gyani, as divine knowledge and the divine truth. He was before Shiva was born. That's how before he was and is. So only later, when ParBrahmanda was created and when duality of Brahmanda was created and all the troubles of dualities emerged, he was before. So that's the deepest ever origin of Advaita Vedanta. There was no Advaita Vedanta even before that. He was, as truth and knowledge of the divine. And as creation started, then the spiritual knowledge started in creation, and then for the souls how to make their way back from being lost within the creation. So from Kabir, the very, very origin of the divine knowledge and truth, as Gyani, because Kabir is just his latest name in Kali Yuga. Meher Baba, who brought great clarity of divine, transcendent truth and how Advaita follows true. And then Adi Shankara, who have saved Advaita Vedanta from getting forgotten, because Buddhism would have taken over a much larger portion of India, and Brahmins and Vedic teachings would have become too much dominant. So probably today we would not be so much interested or advanced in the West either, because for the Westerners, the Hindu rituals are not key interest. in the West, we're interested more in what's the essence of this ritual, what's this is all really about, and not just, blind ritualistic following. Because we had enough of that with Christianity. We need something else. So that's why Buddhism became popular in the West, because it has a clear knowledge structure, and then Advaita Vedanta became even more interesting because it's even more sharp in different way than Buddhism. Though Buddhism is also quite good, great. And yes, nowadays everybody knows Ramana pretty much, and pretty much they think that that's all there is to Advaita Vedanta. If you go to Tiruvannamalai, there is nothing but Ramana and a few pockets of Papaji. And pretty much everybody assumes that that's all there is to it, to Advaita Vedanta. Well, it's great for those who need that, and it's beautiful and necessary, but I want to give a bigger picture. How much more there is, and a bit of historical background behind it. So let's look at the great sayings, Mahavakyas. So these are literally great sayings, great sentences, which are the most profound declarations from the Upanishads that encapsulate the core non-dual truths. So first one is Prajnanam Brahma, which English translation is consciousness is Brahman. Otherwise meaning that Brahman is pure awareness consciousness itself. Or Brahman is the deity, the God, and it's stated that this God is the pure awareness consciousness itself. Then the second great statement is that this self, the Atman, or the soul, in other words, that the soul or the self, the Atman, is Brahman. In other words, the individual self is none other than Brahman. Or in more English, the individual self, which is, let's say, you, myself, or I, is none other than pure awareness. And that's where you should start getting your handbrakes of your mind. Like, my individual self, me, myself, or I, is none other than pure awareness. How does that make sense? It's a handbrake. Well, that's where the 7 days of 7 hours debates were going on. Because in the Vedas it says the soul is the soul, the Brahman is the Brahman. But Adi Shankara says, Upanishads say, no, it's the same. So the I, myself, individual self, is none other than the pure consciousness. For the individual self, it doesn't appear so. It doesn't seem so. You will say, I don't feel like pure consciousness. But the reality is that apparently your individual self is pure consciousness. That's the reality, that's the truth. Well, that's where the big dilemma arises, isn't it? What appears, what seems to be real for the individual self, what appears to be real, but what the reality actually is a different case. And the last statement is that I am Brahman, meaning that the direct realization of I is the true self. I am the true self. Very commonly in the non-dual teachings, it is assumed that you will lose the I. But that's not really the case. And now your ego is... Yes, you can catch your breath. Because typically in the non-dual teachings, you get really scared off that you're gonna die. And I'm coming after you. We're gonna chop your head. Kali is gonna chop your head off, and Shiva is gonna dance on your dead body. That's what some hardcore non-dual teachers would say. I've seen some videos on YouTube. And then I see that those students get traumatized, like, yeah, there's, well, that's the game of Brahmanda. That's when a teacher is in Brahmanda and they kind of know some kind of truth, but not the full truth, and then they assume a lot of things and misinterpret things, and then they may even cause a bit of trouble to some people. Help others and cause trouble to a few others. That's what Brahmanda is about. There is a duality in all of it. So how is it then? The I and the self is actually the same. And some of you will say, I don't need an ego boost. I want my ego to be like as a little puppy, as a little kitten. Because my ego was a big tiger, wild and dangerous. And now, after decades of inquiry, I made my ego like a little kitty, like my puppy. But that's still not the actual meaning of it. It's not to make your ego nice. It's not to make your personality lovely. But it is to merge the I into the big I. To merge the smaller apparent self into the larger self. So to merge the I, myself, or me into the bigger me, into the bigger myself. Now this, for some, it will make sense, but for the others who are not ready, will not make sense. It depends on where you are. But now I want to say how it is. So the I, myself, me, expands, merges into the big I, myself, or me, which is no longer egoic. It's like the usual drop merges into the ocean. It's the same. It was never different. So that's why the soul, but in this regards, it's about the individual self. The self is none other than the pure consciousness. It appears separate. It appears that my separate self is real. But if we speak of the, let's say, Arctic waters, it's like a little block of ice floating in the water. The individual self is like a little block of ice, melting, floating in the water. How did it come to be a block of ice? From where? From the water, from the same water. And where it will go? Into the same water. So it took a form as a block of ice. It took a form from the water, and it will evaporate back into the water. So the individual self came from the ocean, and it goes back into the ocean. Nothing is gained, nothing is lost. And that's where we have all our existential questions in between. But in the big reality, nothing is gained, nothing is lost. It's the large consciousness has made a ripple out of itself and back into itself. Now, for non-dualist, that might end up being a philosophical nightmare, or for a philosopher who encounters this, because all the questions of meaning of life, purpose of life, and so on. Over the non-dual path, we make amends to negotiate with the mind that space is better, that nothingness is better, than awareness is better than things before. But ultimately, in ParBrahmanda, we experience much greater completeness, and greater love can start to come through. And in the divine, this truth is love, and love is truth. And the divine ocean is all love, and the ripple is love. And it came from love, and it will go back to love. And all the truth is love. So that's where all these mental postulations about meaning, purpose of existence, they're just for the mind. And ultimately, all is love. So coming back to Advaita, we see that revising these four great truths of Mahavakyas, that God, Brahman, is pure consciousness itself. The individual self is none other than this God, or pure consciousness. The essence, or that, is what you truly are. And the I, or myself, am this pure consciousness, or God. You see, they're not difficult statements, but they're very deep, profound, because it's not a philosophy, these are direct realizations. So to get to the bottom of those, is the real work